All right. Settle down. So today we're going to talk with Scott Coleman from OWL Cyber Defense about a couple of things. Russ confused the logo of eagle with an owl because we were talking about owls, and owls are interesting creatures because you don't think of them as being like fierce, but they really are. Because like my wife's high school, their mascot was an owl. I was like, an owl. And I was thinking about that Tootsie Pop owl, kind of with the mortarboard.
How many
and all
licks
that.
does it take?
But then
Doug?
I saw the logo of the school. I'm like, well, that is kind of scary. And then you see owls, and you're going, okay, yeah, that's a scary thing.
Not as scary as owl cats.
It eats follow stuff whole and all. What?
Owl cats.
I don't know what that is.
Weird.
Anyway, we're going to talk to Scott Coleman from OWL Cyber Defense today about a product that they make, which is interesting. It was something I hadn't heard of, and we're going to talk about that on the 14th of March of this year. OWL Cyber Defense and Sacred Heart University are going to host the Data Diode Day College Tech Challenge. I had to practice saying that. So we're going to talk about what that actually means, the Data Diode Day College Tech Challenge, and you can practice saying that 3 times fast while you watch the ads. So today on Secure Digital Life, stick around.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So talk and help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. And oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, hey Dave.
It's like Sim, but with,
It would be like Sim.
Instead of AI, it's I.
Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. RSA Conference 2019 is coming up March 4th through the 8th in San Francisco. So if you aren't planning to go yet, you better get it in gear because it's going to happen really soon. If you want to register, go to rsaconference.com/security-weekly-US19 to register now using the discount code 5 Uniform Niner Sierra Whiskey Foxtrot Delta to receive $100 off a full conference pass. If you're interested in booking an interview or briefing with Security Weekly, so that's like with the big shots, you can definitely go to securityweekly.com/conference request and submit your request, and you can do a briefing at RSA, which is really, really cool. Mm-hmm. And on April 1st through 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019, you can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Visit https://infosecworld.misty.com and use the registration code OS19-SecWeek for 15% off the main conference or a world pass. So if you're interested in booking an interview or a briefing at InfoSec World, same thing, go to securityweekly.com/conference request and you can submit yourself or others to that. Today, we're going to talk with OWL Cyber Defense, Scott Coleman, and see what's going on with Data Diode Day down in Fairfield, Connecticut. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Russ and I are happy to have you here. Well, we're glad to talk about that. You guys have a webinar, and I put in the show notes. If you want to go check out the webinar about Data Diode Day, you can get information on this. That's happening on the 30th of January, and you still have until the 22nd of February to register to be in Data Diode Day at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. So I'm gonna go straight to Scott and say, why don't you tell us what Data Diode Day is? I think that a lot of people might be interested in finding that out.
Sure. So about a year ago, we started, we were at a trade show. We do about 90 trade shows a year. And one of the ones we do is out in Colorado, and they bring through university students. They asked if we could host a small informal session for groups of students as they came by. And we said, sure, absolutely. So as the students came to the show, they came by the booth and we explained what data diodes are, how they work in the world of cybersecurity, what we do with the U.S. government, intelligence agencies, critical infrastructure, et cetera. And we said, well, how can we sort of expand on this rather than just doing a couple of small groups of students? And so we started reaching out to universities, colleges in New England and said, hey, we've got this technology. A lot of people have never heard of it. It's been in use for almost 20 years. Maybe we can reach out and help that sort of next generation of cybersecurity folks learn about the technology and maybe it becomes something they're interested in someday, maybe make a career out of, et cetera. So we formed was Data Diode Day. It's going to be a challenge in that there will be a prompt that will describe something about the technology, something about the business itself. And then you can almost, I don't want to call it Shark Tank, but sort of that idea of if given the technology and given some business parameters, what might you do in an entrepreneurial way with the technology and how to figure out a good use of it? We actually participated, the Connecticut Technology Council, we're a member of that, and we participated in an event last fall as judges. And students, same very similar kind of format, students were given a prompt, and this was actually around distracted driving. And students came back, their teams came back with some really creative ideas about how you prevent people from using their cell phones when they're driving, how to make sure people who are intoxicated don't drive, how do people that, maybe use automatic sand dispensers under their tires when the weather is not great to prevent accidents, et cetera. So they came up with some really, really creative ideas. Same prompt, but people came up with lots of different solutions. And that's what we're hoping to do with this is give them a prompt and then come back with some creative ideas on how the technology might be used in some new ways and maybe some new markets.
So like I do Lego, the Lego Robotics League, and they have a component of that like that where you have to develop a project and they give you some kind of spec and you sort of put that together. So it is more like a Shark Tanking kind of thing, right?
I've done the Lego thing too. So I'm
going to come up with an idea for the product and I'm going to come in and present that in a formal, I guess, to a panel of judges. Would that be fair?
Exactly. So we're hoping to get some industry folks to come in and do some of the judging. The technology, for those who don't know a lot about data diodes, you can't hack the technology. That's one of its virtues. And so instead of doing a session where it was a sort of a hackathon or something where people come in and try and do something which we know is actually impossible, we thought it made more sense to think about how to learn about the technology and then figure out how to actually use it in the marketplace and some creative ways to do that. So we're actually hoping that the teams will be comprised of not only maybe cybersecurity majors and computer majors and engineering, but also bring in some business folks. So you get that sort of that mixture of the entrepreneurial aspects of a project or a program along with the technical aspects and try and cover both sides of that.
Okay, so who can get involved in this? I mean, is it like just like some guy on the street can say, "Hey, I'm going for it," or is it like got restrictions?
Yeah, so we're looking for anybody who's currently enrolled in a graduate or undergraduate program, basically in any college or universities. The ones we're targeting are in the New England area just because of ease of physically getting to the location, the Sacred Heart, to do the presentation. But it's really open anyway. If you have some folks from Florida wanted to fly up, great. We're open to anybody who wants to do it, but we're really targeting is those folks in those majors, mostly around cybersecurity, computer engineering, and probably some business majors.
And it's free, right?
Absolutely free. Yeah. We will have prizes, definitely some cash prizes, along with we're looking at do some career development things along the lines of internships or something there. Maybe it's some mini camps, or we're working through those logistics still at this point. So we'll have those, announced by the time the prompt is provided, et cetera. But yeah, there will definitely be some cool prizes.
Okay. Well, let's just, I want to talk a little bit about, how you put together teams for things like this, because one of the things I think that's a big weakness of a lot of engineering, computer science type programs is just the ability of people to be able to pitch, present, write, and put things together. I mean, I see that all the time. It's one of the big drawbacks in forensics. I get all these people that are taking my forensics class, and they can't write a complete sentence. They can't present. They can't talk about it. What are some skills, Scott and Russ? I know Russ is big in this stuff too. What are some skills that you should have? I mean, obviously we need tech skills.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the softer side of that for a second. What do you think? What should people do to try to amp up on that end? Scott?
Sure. So, one of the things that we do as we're developing products, we go through a fairly rigorous process of validating or justifying a business idea before we actually jump in and start developing. So we develop a business case, which talks about where opportunities are in the market, which then leads, once that's approved, leads to a marketing requirement specification that actually defines the requirements, harkens back to the business case for justification of why you're doing it, which then leads to a functional specification, a high-level design, then you move into product development plan, et cetera. In each of those stages and those milestones, we're getting our engineers involved along with the product management team, along with the marketing team, to really flesh out the value to the business in moving forward this development. So we will have on a regular basis developers presenting their concepts for the product in response to the requirements that are written originally. So it's very important to be able to have those written skills so you can actually put a plan together and say, this is how I'm going to develop against this, be able to get up in front of basically the executive management team and say, this is why we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it, and be able to sort of stand up there and take the questions and answer them and have some really, so it's verbal communication skills, it's written communication skills, it's being able to create a presentation. It's all those things you would sort of expect. When you see in the job description, it says, excellent verbal and written skills required. Well, that's why. Just because you're a programmer doesn't mean you're never going to be in a situation you're presenting a concept or an idea trying to justify why the business should move down a certain path.
Yeah. So how do we get, Russ, how do we get those skills? Because I'm a narcissist. So, anytime somebody said, this class has a presentation, I was like, I'll do it. Yeah. And so, but I mean, a lot of people, and I've seen products fail. I've seen people lose court cases. I've seen people not get convictions. All because it wasn't because of the data, it wasn't because of the product, it was because they couldn't sell it. They couldn't come in and sell it. How do you get those skills?
One of the things similar to Data Diode Day that I had the fortune of being part of was this thing called it was called Startup Weekend, which happened here in Rhode Island, in Providence actually, through I think it was the PCTA, the Providence Career and Technical Advisory. And what they did was they assembled a group of students. They were mostly 8th to 12th graders, so high school, freshman, sophomore, and so on. And then to tackle that very question or issue that you're raising, Doug, they had members in the community come in, and they were advisors for the groups of the students that were broken down. They weren't so much advisors as they were mentors, and we had a show recently talking about the importance of mentors in this field. And so these mentors, of which I was one, would come in and they would kind of hone in or listen to the skills and the strengths and also growth areas of individuals in the group, and they would assign roles. So somebody who's better at public speaking may, have given the presentation to sell, to raise money for the particular business they were proposing. One who was better at programming was actually doing the website design for the company and maybe even some of the programming for the whatever the solution was they were building. So, but I think the key there was the mentor, really brought sort of the skills together, and it wasn't sort of a free for all. So I thought that kind of was nice.
So how do you score that, Scott? I've been on these things too, and I've been on these Shark Tank things, and I've sat on a lot of boards and things for companies that wanted somebody there who knew the tech side of it to evaluate presentations from marketing people or whatever. How do you score something like this Data Diode Day?
Yeah, so we'll provide a rubric so people know in advance how they're being judged. So it'll certainly be on presentation skills. It'll be on the understanding of the technology. Did you really understand what makes the data diode different than a firewall, and what the attributes are that make it applicable to the particular market you're trying to satisfy, et cetera. So we're going to look at the application of the technology, make sure you understand the technology, that you've got a good, as I say, solid business plan or justification for why to go after this certain thing, and then the actual presentation itself. So there's going to be a number of criteria, but there will be a published rubric ahead of time so people know how they're being graded.
Are you going to do any like mentoring videos or anything so that when people sit down and they go, okay, here's what the rubric says. It says come in and be personable. You know, I mean, do you have any like guidance like that, or should they seek mentors on their own?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We have a ton of resources on our website about the technology and how it's used and use cases and that kind of stuff. So people can certainly take their lead from what we have done and created to date. But I think that's a great idea. We should open up, maybe we'll create an email address that would come into our team, my team, which consists of product managers and marketing folks, which could actually review those questions. If people, want some direction, part of the reason we got into this whole thing was exactly for being a mentor. We want to engage with the academic world and help educate them and train them and create, tomorrow's workforce. Yeah. And so, if that means we should jump in and offer some kind of mentoring skills, then so be it. That would definitely be a great thing for us to do. So I'm going to talk to my team. We'll get an email address out there that people can subscribe questions to.
I think more companies should put up things like that about soft skills, because I mean, if you put on a job ad and it says you need to be able to write C code, okay, I mean, we all know what that means. Maybe you don't know C and you don't apply, but if you know C, you kind of get the idea. But then it also says, must be presentable and personable and, fit with our company and our organizational design and all these things. I see those kind of ads, and I think a lot, especially entry-level people, a lot of them don't know. And I get asked those questions a lot. People say, I was trying to apply for this job and it says, business casual dress. What does that mean? And then it says, must be able to present effectively. Yeah. And they're like, I never took a presentation class or anything like that, but I can code like crazy. And it would be great to have more companies putting up videos and YouTube videos and saying, here's what we think that means. Because it can be very discreet. Your company may have a very different opinion of what business casual personal behavior is compared to, say, some bank in Danbury or an insurance company or Security Weekly, where everything is different. I mean, I can wear, weird T-shirts to work, and that's considered business dress here. But I probably shouldn't do that if I go to one of my other clients where they expect you to wear a coat and tie.
Like Bank of America or something like that.
And
well, we're all wearing Patriots T-shirts on Friday. So
okay.
Patriots Friday.
A sports reference. Yeah. What's Friday?
Super Bowl is Sunday, so they're getting ready to be excited.
He said, is Friday the Super Bowl?
That's probably the last time they'll see each other at work.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to get, their team ready to...
Okay, yeah, I don't know anything about sports.
Yeah, I mean, me either.
I did get warned that there was a big game this weekend, so I would go, because I go to the store and do shopping and stuff.
Yeah, and you see all the tortillas are missing.
And I always, base my whole life around, I went to the store today and everybody was wearing jerseys. Is something going on?
Why is it always Fritos and Doritos that are missing? Why can't it be like, white corn chips so I can have
I don't
Fritos?
get invited to those parties. Yeah. They're like, we're not going to invite him. When they have programming parties, I get invited.
But you don't like sports, so you'd be kind of
I don't. I'd be clueless, and I'd be like, what happened there? The guy threw the ball and hit the guy in the head. I don't know. Is that good or bad or whatever?
So Scott, forgive my ignorance, but can you tell me and maybe some of the audience members what a data diode is?
Yeah, I was getting
Sure.
Oh, were you? Oh.
So it's
thanks, Russ.
Solution. Firewalls, if you think about firewalls, they're basically governed by software rules. So filter on this, prevent this, open this port, close this port, etc. So there's some kind of criteria that's set up and established that controls what's happening over that device. A data diode is actually based on core hardware. So there's two sides to every data diode. One is the source side, where you have data. So that could be a database, it could be a file, it could be a stream of information, it could be syslog information, etc. It could be, UDP video stream coming off of a UAV or something along those lines. That's the source side. So that's the data that needs to get moved, transited across, and then we'll be going across some kind of boundary. So this could be a segment within a plant, let's say, or it could be the edge of the plant going out to headquarters or wherever it's going. The other side of the diode is the destination, and it receives data and moves it on to the final destination. What separates the two in between is the actual diodes themselves. So the source side or the send side is got an LED that shines light over a fiber optic cable. The receive side or the destination has a photo receiver that receives that light the other end of the fiber optic cable. And on the receive side, there is no LED to send light backwards. And on the source side, there is no photo receiver to receive light. So literally, you can only send light or data over the fiber optic cable in one direction. Physically impossible to go backwards across the data diode. Cannot be done. So you cannot hack the device because you cannot sort of spontaneously create circuits or components that don't exist on the data diode as it's manufactured. So you can't send data backwards, which means if I'm on the outside, let's say I'm on the internet anywhere, and I try to get into this plant, let's say, so we do a lot of stuff with power generation plants, oil and gas rigs, etc. You cannot get into those facilities through a data diode. Physically impossible. You cannot force data to go backwards through. So that's the sort of the crux of the core of a data diode is moving data in a singular direction across it. Now,
what happens to like TCP then? So I mean, if I send if I hit your database and I'm requesting information. So, okay, so the information can come to me, but how did the request get there in the first place if it can only go one way? Is that a different channel?
Right. So you've sort of jumped ahead a little bit. So let me hit low-hanging fruit first, and then I'll get to that question because it's really thing comes up all the time. So let's start with saying that inside the plant, so I'm a power generation plant, I'm generating electricity. Maybe it's a nuclear power plant or it's run by natural gas, whatever, it doesn't matter. Could be solar, wind, etc. We're in a bunch of those. But I've got my turbines and they're operating and they're generating data. And so maybe it's just SIM data, it's operational data that needs to get out to a remote facility in Atlanta. But I don't want anybody in my plant. So the current sort of idea is that, well, all networks are two-way. And if I'm in Atlanta and need to get into the plant that's in Savannah, I will just sort of open up a TCP/IP connection. I'll go in, I'll grab that data and I'll pull it back out and now I'm good. Now, if I've got 14 vendors that need data for legitimate reasons, maybe it's production data, maybe it's maintenance information, it's just general alarming information, etc. Then I've got 14 holes in my network where these vendors are coming in, and every hole into my network becomes a vulnerability. Now, what if I could just convert some of those instead of a reach in to a push, and I push that traffic out to you instead. So I know that you need the following information from me on a regular basis, and I'm going to push that data. So that starts the transition from everything's two-way to I can make certain things one way and I can push out. But I still got the equipment on the inside of the plant and it's expecting a TCP/IP connection in your example. So what do? Well, I can't just break the TCP/IP. I need to sort of handle that appropriately. So we actually run as proxies on that inside, on that source side. So we run a TCP/IP proxy that communicates with the original device, whether it's a PLC hanging on the wall or it's some kind of server, it's a database or whatever it is. We talk to it in its native format. As we get that data in, we terminate that session or that stream basically. We send back the ACKs and the NACKs and everything that's expected of the protocol. We take the payload out of those original packets. We actually use ATM going across the diode. So across that fiber, we're using an ATM protocol, asynchronous transfer mode. That's the old protocol developed by the phone companies to move video and voice at very low latency, at high bandwidth. So we use that across, and of course, we're only going about 8 inches. We're going across the box. So we've got no routers, no switches, nothing on it. It's total pure point to point. So there's no routing going on or anything inside. So we take those packets out. We actually put them in an ATM channel. We send them across the diode. On the other side, we pull it back out, the payload only. And there's a table that says, okay, anything coming in this ATM channel is actually going to be put back into TCP/IP and sent on its way to the original source. So what happens is you basically break that original TCP/IP two-way connection from point to point. We get in the middle with a one-way transfer, and so you're still talking two-way on either side. Now, part of your question was, what if I'm on the outside and I need to originate a request? So some of those gets converted to the one-way and doing what I just described. Do have a second solution that's two one-way paths. And so the analogy that's easiest for people to understand is security at an airport. When you go to the airport, you go in through one side, they check your ID, they check your ticket, they scan you, they scan your bags. Now you're inside, now you fly wherever it is you're going, you come back. And when you leave the airport, you don't go back through that same process in reverse. No, you go through a different one-way path where there's a guard sitting there. As soon as you cross that line on the floor, you cannot go back into the airport. You have to come out and you'd have to go back through. So we do have a product called Recon, which allows 2 one-way paths, completely autonomous, don't know anything about them. But like you as a passenger, you made a full round trip, you can do a full round trip with a packet. And so if you are in a plant, the Department of Homeland Security has actually issued a white paper that says, hey, if you need to protect an industrial control system or critical infrastructure, here's what you do. You make as many passes one way as possible. And if you still have 2-way left over that you actually have to do, then you would do a lockdown single port, single path, which is what I just described with Recon. So there are ways to use 2 one-way paths in combination to create a round trip.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand all this. So I've got this big fan turbine thing, or whatever you call them, wind turbine. I don't know.
Sure.
That rotates. And that wind turbine thing is reporting to some central facility somewhere else that it's spinning at 15 RPM or whatever. That probably makes no sense, but it's whatever rate it's spinning. And so it sends a packet that in ATM. So the wind turbine uses ATM. And if you don't know what ATM is, it's like Scott said, it's an old protocol, but it's a very effective one. And so
it may actually be using TCP/IP.
Okay.
Right? It's probably very current, so it's going to be sending TCP/IP. Okay. But to our box, we convert it to ATM.
Okay, well let's do TCP then. So the TCP packet goes out of the wind turbine and says, "Hi, I'm at 15 RPMs. My data packets follow," and it sends a request like a SYN off to the other end. So this is some central controller at the facility, and that SYN packet, when it gets there, a SYNAC comes back. So the SYNAC can't go back over that one-way connection. It goes to your proxy server instead. And it goes to the proxy server, and the proxy server then sends back the SYNAC that says, yes, everything's cool. And so on my end, I don't really know anything about what's happening other than I got a SYN, I sent a SYNAC back, and I got a SYNAC back for that. So the TCP is effectively established. And in that regard, it wouldn't know where the data was coming from. So then that data could stream up to my collection server point at that point. Does that make sense?
That's basically, yeah, all right. So if you're the turbine and you send me I'm the proxy, Doug is the final recipient, you send it to me as TCP/IP, I convert it to ATM, I get it to the other side, and then I would send it to Doug back as TCP/IP. Doug wouldn't know that it came through me. He just thinks he's talking to you directly.
Okay, but the proxy server is open to the outside. Is that right? I mean,
the proxies, there's actually proxies on both sides.
Okay. Okay. So they're almost acting like modems then.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sorry, there would be one proxy would be talking to you, Doug, and then my destinations I would be talking to Russ as the other side.
Okay, so that's all. Is that all proprietary then? I mean, that's like that. You have to have both ends of it. So this whole system would not be something where I just buy one end of it and set it up and say, okay, I'm in business. It would have to be where I'm doing something like you're describing, where I've almost got modems on each end that are talking.
You would, but the destinations you're talking to would have no idea that it's in the middle. So you need a whole box, and you need both sides. But if you do it correctly, like our customers do, there's no reason for you to even know that there's a diode in between.
Okay, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for years I've talked to people about the ProdDev. So I'm an old mainframe person, and in mainframe shops you had this ProdDev business, and when you develop things in production, that never sees the outside world. And if you do it right, there is a firewall, which in this case would be the data diode, that pushes, when someone approves it, it pushes that production stuff onto a dev machine. And the dev machine can never talk to the prod machine directly, because that way, if you get hacked, what happens, like I used to have this set up on one of my web servers, and they could hack the web server until they dropped. And every time they hacked it and they said it's been owned by, in 30 seconds, it pushed a new copy back out, and they could never get beyond that point because it was one-way traffic. The firewall just did not allow connects to come back other than just acknowledgments and things like that. So it sounds like it's very much down that road, which I very much in support of.
Yeah. So it's your segmentation, what you described, is exactly how our customers use it. So you push the binary, you're executable across, but no reason for anybody to come in as long as you're producing and getting those binaries out that people need them.
So you could use that for my backup model too. So one of my backup models I always teach students is that your backup should not be being pulled off production devices. I mean, they shouldn't be, seeing what's out there, because then you'll basically overwrite all your stored data. The backup should be pushing out. And so you could do the data diode there. That'd be awesome, because you could put the data diode in front of my backup machine where all the real information is, and it pushes it back out onto the public device all the time. I like that. That would be cool.
Yeah. That's exactly the right use case.
Okay.
So, I mean, whether it's a bank, pushing stuff out to a data center, or it's, let's say a bank needs to get its statements published, right? Well, there's no reason for the vendor who prints statements to be able to come into the bank to grab that data, just push that data out to the vendor and let them print his statements and mail them, right? So exact same scenario. There's lots and lots of them across in all kinds of different industries.
Is there authentication between those points too? I mean, so I know that I'm talking to you and it's not a spoof or something?
That's a good question.
Right. So there is usually where you care about that is on the inside, and usually you're in a secure environment. So those are trusted endpoints. But we do whitelisting. We actually enable firewalls on us. There's a bunch of things that I've described the hardware, but there's a lot of layers. We always do what we call defense in depth, right? And that's pretty common. And so we have defense in depth layered into the box from the operating system, role-based access controls, whitelisting. I'm trying to think what else. We do encryption across the box, etc. So there's a bunch of things that we do depending on how secure the particular customer needs their operation to be.
Right, because if you could intercept that one-way data, you can still be intercepting data. Right. So you have to be able, those points have to lock into each other.
Most of the time, the data, like your example before, the fact that a turbine's turning at 15 RPM, there's not much you can do with that data. It's not sensitive data. What's more important is no one can get into the plant and screw with the turbine, right? You don't want anybody messing with that turbine, but being able to share that data because it's not proprietary. There's nothing really that interesting with the number, RPM measurement. That's people can't typically do much with that.
No, I like that. So, Russ, anything else you want to talk about?
No. Okay. Yeah. So, no, I don't. I think this is good. Yeah.
Well, Scott, that's great, and I hope a lot of people out there watching will come in and sign up to come to Data Diode Day. And are you going to give free samples of data diodes to everybody? Can we get to take one home?
I don't know if we're at that point. We have actually created a Lego version of our diode. We're hoping to get very shortly. We've got it. It's in production right now. And that's actually one of the things we will be giving is Lego versions of data diodes.
And Scott, just one quick question. If any of our audience members want to tune in, are you going to have like a live stream or something along those lines that they can look at just to see what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, we're planning on doing that. We're also got some product launches come up later this year that we're going to do some live streaming onto. Yeah, so we've got a lot of things queued up for later this year.
Awesome.
So it seems to me like this is a product that a lot of you that are watching may want to start reading up on, because I think it's a very interesting idea, and it's the technology and how you do it that's more interesting, I think, than just the concept. I mean, conceptually, it's something we've known about. I mean, I don't think anybody would deny that, but the technology that they're using for this is new and different, and that makes it more feasible, I think, for a lot of end users to put in place at their if you happen to have one of those kind of things. Maybe there will someday be a product we can all use. We don't have to have wind turbines or be a large consumer. Is there a Soho plan?
That may be. That might be later this year. Stay tuned.
Oh, he can't tell us, but he's smiling. So,
nice.
Nice. Insider trading. You heard it here first. So, wow. Awesome. Scott, anything else you want to tell us about?
No, there is a. Data diodes aren't new. The technology we've been around for 20 years, and the government first adopted it, and the intelligence agencies and DoD have been using it for a very long time. But one of the things you just touched on is relevant in that there's a perception that this is very expensive technology. It's only applicable to the high-end nuclear power plants and Department of Defense or the Air Force or something. And we've been working very hard over the last several years to bring the product down in price, still providing the functionality that's required, but sort of make this much more mainstream. And that's sort of what I was alluding to is we'll be going later this year. So if you think about the Internet of Things, right, IoT or the IIoT, Internet of Things, that's where we're headed, and make sure that things are protected.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, because I was like, one of the things we talk about all the time is IoT, and I'm like, those are devices that often don't need to be talked to and back and forth, so they just have these sort of one-way, like, here's my altitude kind of things, and they don't necessarily have to have, a lot of interaction, and that would be a really good, and we always try and figure out how do we secure these things, because our houses are full of them now.
And they're not definitely secure by design.
So the flying cat drone that we're going to make, I want a data diode on that. I had a video the other day of a guy that takes these like dead animals and then he like stuffs them, like, which is creepy in and of itself. And then he puts drones inside their now empty body sacks and flies them around.
And it's as hideous as you can imagine.
It was really, really bizarre. I mean, there was an ostrich, there was a cat, there was a rat, the cat was my favorite because I have cats.
Yeah, he loved cats, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a backyard full of ones that are no longer alive. And I was like, there we go. Like, get the shovel.
No use.
All right. Well, thanks, Russ. Thanks, Scott Coleman from Owl Defense. I think
Scott.
that's awesome. And we will hopefully see you at the Data Diode Days. So thanks for watching Secure Digital Life. It's been fun, and we'll see you next time. Bye.